I had finally drawn the line. I refused to hand over my retirement savings for my son's failing restaurant, the same venture that had already swallowed nearly everything I had built over 40 years. That was when my daughter-in-law, the woman I had welcomed into my home like my own child, looked me straight in the eyes and said, with ice in her voice, "Then maybe it's time you found somewhere else to live." That moment shattered something deep inside me. I could not stomach another insult. So I gathered what dignity I had left and walked out before dawn. The strange part? Within 2 weeks, they came crawling back, begging me to return. Before we continue, please subscribe to stay updated on our latest stories. That evening in late October, the rain hammered against the windows of the Vancouver house I had called home for 6 years. Inside, the kitchen smelled of roast beef and Yorkshire pudding, a Sunday tradition my late wife Helen had started decades ago. I kept it going even after she passed, hoping the familiar rituals might hold the family together. My son, Derek, sat across from me at the dining table, that eager expression plastered across his face. The same look he wore every time he needed something. His wife Vanessa perched beside him, her manicured nails tapping against her wine glass, watching me like a hawk eyeing its prey. "Dad, I've been crunching the numbers," Derek said, sliding a tablet across the table. Graphs and projections glowed on the screen. "The Maple and Main expansion is ready. We just need the capital to secure the second location in Yaletown." I kept cutting my roast beef, my movement steady despite the knot forming in my stomach. From the corner of my eye, I caught sight of the photographs on the sideboard. Derek's graduation from culinary school, his wedding to Vanessa 12 years ago, my grandchildren's school photos. 14 years of memories, but also 14 years of checks I had written, mortgages I had covered, and so-called emergencies I had bailed them out of. "This is different, Dad," Derek pressed, leaning forward. "The first restaurant is finally breaking even. A second location in Yaletown would double our revenue within 18 months. Vanessa chimed in, her voice syrupy sweet. "Harold, you've always believed in Derek's dreams. This investment would secure the children's future. Mackenzie wants to go to UBC next year, and Tyler's hockey equipment alone costs a fortune." My fork paused midair. The words came out rougher than I intended. "Derek, I've been supporting this family financially for 14 years. I gave you $200,000 for culinary school and the original restaurant. I've covered your mortgage payments for the past 5 years. I co-signed your business loans. When does it end?" The room fell silent. Rain streaked down the windows like tears. Vanessa's wine glass froze halfway to her lips. Derek's face cycled through shock, then hurt, then something harder. "Dad, come on. Family helps family. That's what you always taught me. I taught you to work hard and stand on your own feet." Somewhere along the way, that lesson got lost. Vanessa set down her glass with a sharp click. "Harold, we've given you a home for 6 years. We've included you in every family dinner, every holiday, every birthday. And now, when we're on the verge of real success, you're turning your back on us?" "I'm not turning my back. I'm setting a boundary." Derek pushed back from the table. "A boundary? You call abandoning your only son a boundary? I call refusing to empty my retirement account for a restaurant that hasn't turned a profit in 3 years a boundary. There's a difference." Vanessa's mask slipped then. Her eyes narrowed, and her voice turned cold as the November wind outside. "If that's how you feel, Harold, then perhaps it's time you found somewhere else to live. We've been more than generous, letting you stay here rent-free after Helen passed. But generosity has limits." The words hit me like a physical blow. After Helen died from cancer 4 years ago, Derek had insisted I move in with them. "Family takes care of family," he had said. "You shouldn't be alone in that big house." And now, the same roof he had offered was being pulled out from under me. "What did you just say?" I managed, my voice barely a whisper. "You heard her, Dad." Derek wouldn't meet my eyes. Maybe some time apart would be good for everyone. "Let you think about what really matters." I stared at my son, searching for the boy I had raised. The one who used to help me shovel snow from the neighbors' driveways without being asked. The one who cried at his mother's funeral and promised he would always take care of me. That boy was gone, replaced by a man who saw me as nothing more than a checkbook with legs. I see. I folded my napkin carefully and placed it beside my plate. Then I suppose there's nothing more to discuss. That night, I lay awake in the guest room that had been my home for 6 years, listening to the muffled argument drifting up through the floor. Vanessa's sharp voice cut through, something about ungrateful, and after everything we've done. Derek's responses were harder to hear, but his tone was defensive, not apologetic. At 2 in the morning, I finally got up. In the corner stood the filing cabinet I had brought from the house Helen and I had shared for 38 years. Old habits from my days as an accountant at BC Hydro had never faded. I kept everything organized, documented, filed. I pulled open the bottom drawer, a folder marked Family Financial Support. Derek and Vanessa sat thickest of all. My own handwriting labeled it clearly. Inside, papers spread across the small desk. Bank statements, canceled checks, wire transfer confirmations. 14 years of love translated into dollars and cents. The wedding in 2010 came first. Venue at the Fairmont. Catering, flowers, honeymoon in Hawaii. $62,000. Our boy deserves the best, Helen had said. I switched on the calculator app on my phone. The culinary school tuition. The down payment on their first house in Burnaby. The restaurant startup costs. The equipment loans. Emergency repairs when the kitchen flooded. Tyler's hockey camps. Mackenzie's private school fees. Medical bills when Vanessa needed her gallbladder removed and Derek's benefits didn't cover everything. The numbers climbed like a fever chart. 300,000, 350, 400. By the time I finished, the total glared back at me in the pale light of my phone screen. $437,000. Nearly $500,000. Helen's life insurance, my pension contributions, our retirement savings, all of it poured into a bottomless pit of need. I picked up my phone and dialed the 24-hour line for my financial advisor at TD Wealth Management. This is Harold Pemberton. I need to cancel the automatic transfers to the account ending in 7,823. The advisor asked for confirmation. I'm done being taken for granted, I said, surprised by the steadiness in my own voice. 20 minutes later, it was finished. At the bottom of my files, I found the power of attorney documents I had signed 3 years earlier, after my hip replacement surgery. Derek's name was listed as my alternate decision maker. I fed the pages into the small shredder I kept beside my desk, watching his authority dissolve into confetti strips. For the first time in months, I felt something loosen in my chest. That night, I searched online for Vancouver apartments. Studios downtown, 1-bedrooms near transit, quiet places in Kitsilano. The house creaked around me, but my mind was already elsewhere. By Friday morning, October sunlight streamed through the windows of a 9th-floor apartment on Davie Street. Margaret Chen, the property manager, gestured toward the galley kitchen. Perfect for someone who appreciates simplicity. Walking distance to Stanley Park, English Bay, all the transit you could need. I barely listened. The apartment felt right. Clean lines, good light, a view of the North Shore, mountains through the living room window. I'll take it, I said. She hesitated. Don't you want to see the storage locker? We haven't discussed lease terms. References I need piece more than square footage, Miss Chen. I opened my checkbook. First and last month's rent, plus the security deposit. Done. 3 hours later, I pulled into Derek's driveway. His Tesla was gone, probably at the restaurant, prepping for the lunch service. Vanessa's Mercedes was missing too. Her yoga class ran until noon on Fridays. The house key felt different in my hand now. Heavier somehow, or maybe lighter. I was finally letting go. I moved through rooms I had called home for 6 years, deciding quickly. Helen's watercolors came with me. The antique clock her father had brought from England. My military medals from my peacekeeping service. The leather recliner, Vanessa, had always complained about, stayed behind. She had won that battle years ago, banishing it to the basement. Let her have her victory. Mackenzie's piano sat in the living room, the one I had bought when she showed interest in music at age 8. She had quit lessons after 6 months, but the piano remained, a very expensive coat rack. Let them keep that reminder of abandoned commitments. West Coast Moving arrived at 11. 2 men and a truck that barely fit in the narrow driveway. The crew leader, a young man with kind eyes, checked my list. Mr. Pemberton? This all of it? Pretty light load for a house this size. Everything with the blue tape goes. Leave the rest. What about the piano? Beautiful instrument. I watched them load my desk, my books, my memories of Helen. It belongs to someone else now. The hardest item was Helen's jewelry box. Small, rosewood, lined in velvet, the color of forget-me-nots. She had told me once to pass it to a granddaughter someday. Maybe I would, maybe not. That would be my choice now. I left an envelope on the kitchen counter. Inside, a short note. Derek and Vanessa, I have moved out. The keys are on the counter. Financial support has been canceled. You wanted me to leave. Consider it done. Do not contact me until you are ready to have an honest conversation about respect. My new address will remain private. This isn't negotiable. Harold. Later, as I arranged books on my new shelves, my phone buzzed. Derek's name lit the screen. Dad, what the hell? Your stuff is gone. There's some kind of note I moved out. You can't just leave. This is your home. Vanessa's voice cut in from the background. Harold, let's talk about this rationally. We were upset last Sunday. Things were said that you told me to find somewhere else to live. I took your advice. I didn't mean please don't call again until you're ready to discuss what respect actually looks like in a family. I ended the call and powered off the phone. Through the window, Vancouver's skyline glittered against the darkening sky. Tomorrow, I would explore my new neighborhood, find a coffee shop, maybe the community center. Tonight, I ordered sushi from the place across the street and ate it at my own table, in my own space, with no one expecting anything except a tip for the delivery driver. Monday morning found me in the downtown offices of Wellington Fong, the estate lawyer Margaret Chen had recommended. His office overlooked the harbor, container ships moving slowly toward the port like patient giants. Mr. Pemberton, Wellington said, spreading documents across his conference table. Let me make sure I understand. You want to restructure your entire estate to protect your assets from potential claims by your son? My son and his wife believe I owe them a living. I want to make sure they can never force that belief into reality. Wellington nodded slowly. British Columbia's Wills Variation Act does give adult children standing to challenge estates they feel are unfair. However, with proper planning, we can create structures that are very difficult to contest. We spent 2 hours building walls, a family trust with discretionary distributions, new beneficiary designations on my registered accounts, a revised will that explained, in clear language, my reasons for the distributions I had chosen. You've listed your granddaughter Mackenzie as the primary beneficiary of the trust, Wellington noted. She's only 17. She's also the only one who ever remembers my birthday without being reminded. She visits because she wants to, not because she needs something. Wellington made notes without comment. By noon, a notary had witnessed every signature. Each stamp felt like another lock on the fortress I was building. As I left his office with a leather portfolio of certified documents, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Dad, it's Vanessa. Derek is too proud to reach out, but we need to talk. The restaurant is struggling. Can we meet tonight? I can come to you. I deleted it without responding. Let them struggle. I had struggled enough for all of us. At exactly 7 that evening, the intercom buzzed. Through the video screen, Vanessa's face looked pinched and anxious. She held a bottle of wine like a peace offering. Harold, I know you said not to contact you, but please, just 10 minutes. I let her up, more out of curiosity than anything else. She walked into my apartment and scanned the space with barely concealed disappointment. It's so small. Harold, this isn't suitable for someone your age. I find it suits me perfectly. I gestured toward the single armchair. Sit. Say what you came to say. She perched on the edge of the seat, clutching her purse like a shield. The restaurant is in trouble. Derek didn't want me to tell you, but we're 3 months behind on the lease. If we can't come up with $40,000 by the end of November, the landlord will terminate our agreement. That sounds like a problem for you and Derek to solve. Harold, please. Her eyes glistened, right on cue. We've already approached everyone we know. Derek's parents are living on fixed income. My family isn't in a position to help. You're our only option. Derek's parents, I said slowly. They gave you $20,000 for your wedding. They paid for Tyler's hockey equipment last Christmas. They sent Mackenzie money for her birthday every year. Vanessa blinked, clearly surprised I knew these details. How did you, Helen and I, kept in touch with the Lawsons until she passed? Good people. Sensible. They warned Derek not to expand the restaurant too quickly, didn't they? Her silence was answer enough. Here's what I see, Vanessa. You and Derek have had access to an ATM for 14 years. Every time you overspent, every time the business underperformed, every time you wanted something you couldn't afford, you pressed the magic button and money appeared. That ATM is now closed. You're being cruel. I'm being honest. There's a difference. She stood abruptly, wine bottle still in hand. Fine. When the restaurant fails and we lose the house, I hope you can live with yourself. I've been living with myself just fine for 67 years. I expect I'll manage. She left without another word. The wine bottle sat on my counter until the next morning, when I gave it to my neighbor down the hall. A nice Okanagan red, wasted on bitterness. 2 days later, Derek appeared. No flowers this time. No pretense of reconciliation. Just my son standing in my doorway, looking older than his 44 years, his chef's whites stained with what looked like tomato sauce. Dad, we need to talk. Come in. He paced my small living room, too agitated to sit. Vanessa said you turned her down flat. Didn't even let her explain. She explained plenty. You need $40,000. You've burned through everything else. I'm supposed to ride to the rescue one more time. That's not fair. Derek, tell me something. When was the last time you called me just to see how I was doing? Not to ask for something. Not to invite me to dinner so you could pitch another investment. Just to talk. He stopped pacing. I don't know. Maybe last spring? Try 3 years ago. The anniversary of your mother's death. You called to ask if I was all right. That was the last time. Dad, running a restaurant is demanding. I don't have time for. You have time to draft business proposals and calculate projected returns. You don't have time to remember your father exists unless you need his wallet. His face hardened. Fine. You want to play the victim? Go ahead. But when the restaurant closes and the kids suffer because their grandfather was too cheap to help, remember this conversation, the kids. I turned toward the window. When was Mackenzie's last piano recital? She quit piano years ago. When was Tyler's last hockey tournament? Silence. Last month. Mackenzie drove up to Whistler to watch him play. You and Vanessa didn't make it. Too busy with the restaurant, I assume. Derek's jaw tightened. We sent a card. A card. The same thing you sent when I had my hip replacement. Mackenzie sat with me through the surgery. Tyler called every day. You sent a card, Dad. I'm not going to stand here and be guilt-tripped. Then don't. Leave. Come back when you're ready to be my son instead of my creditor. He slammed the door hard enough to rattle my windows. Through the glass, I watched him stalk across Davy Street toward the parking garage, phone already pressed to his ear, reporting his failure to Vanessa. No doubt. My own phone chimed. A text from Mackenzie. Grandpa, Mom and Dad are being weird. Can I come visit this weekend? I'll bring those almond cookies you like from Granville Island. I smiled for the first time in days. Yes, bring your appetite. At least one family member wanted company, not cash. Saturday afternoon, Mackenzie arrived with cookies and coffee and a genuine hug. 17 years old, Helen's eyes looking out of her young face, and a warmth about her that reminded me why I hadn't given up on family entirely. Grandpa, this place is actually cool. She wandered through my apartment, examining books, peering out at the view. Way better than the basement room at home. You can see the mountains from here. Your mother thinks it's too small. Mom thinks anything without a double garage and granite countertops is too small. We sat together on my small balcony, wrapped in blankets against the autumn chill, watching ferries cross the harbor. So what happened? Mackenzie asked directly. Dad won't talk about it. Mom just keeps crying about the restaurant. They asked me to invest more money. I said no. They asked me to leave, and you actually left. She said it with something like admiration. I thought you'd cave like always. Like always? She looked away. Grandpa, I love you, but you've been kind of a pushover since Grandma died. Every time Dad asks for something, you give it to him. Tyler and I used to joke about it. We called you the Magic Bank. The words stung, but I couldn't deny them. Maybe I was trying to fill the hole she left. Or maybe you were trying to buy what couldn't be bought. Helen's eyes, Helen's wisdom, looking at me from our granddaughter's face. When did you get so smart? I'm in my final year. All the smart kids figure out who actually loves them versus who just needs them. She squeezed my hand. For the record, I actually love you. 2 weeks passed. November. Winds swept down from the mountains, bringing the first real cold of the season. I fell into a rhythm I hadn't known in years. Coffee at 7, the Globe and Mail until 8, a walk through Stanley Park by 10. No frantic phone calls interrupting breakfast. No guilt trips ruining my afternoons. Just peace. At the community center near my building, I started attending the seniors' lunch program. Not because I needed help cooking, but because the silence of living alone had started to feel heavier than I expected. The conversations helped. The company of people who expected nothing from me except the pleasure of shared time. It was there, over a Thursday lunch of shepherd's pie and mixed vegetables, that I noticed her. Silver hair, cut short and practical, reading glasses perched on her nose as she studied a crossword puzzle, the kind of focused attention that suggested a sharp mind behind it. 6 across, she muttered, frowning at the newspaper. Canadian Prime Minister who introduced official bilingualism. 8 letters. Trudeau, I offered. Pierre, not Justin. She looked up, startled, then smiled. Of course. I should have known that. I was at Expo 67, for heaven's sake. So was I. The Canadian Pavilion. I worked there, she said, extending her hand. Summer job before university. Evelyn Marchetti. Harold Pemberton. I was just visiting. BC Hydro Employee Picnic. We talked until the volunteers started stacking chairs. She had taught high school English for 35 years. Widowed 6 years ago, her husband Frank taken quickly by a stroke. 2 sons who lived responsibly, one in Ottawa and one in Edmonton, neither of them asking her for money or treating her like a burden. You sound almost surprised when you say that, I observed. My sons are good men. I got lucky, she paused. From your tone, I'm guessing you weren't so fortunate. Over the following weeks, I found myself looking forward to Thursdays with an anticipation I hadn't felt since Helen was alive. Evelyn was sharp, funny, unsentimental about the compromises of aging, but warm in her approach to life. She didn't need anything from me, and somehow that made me want to give more. December arrived with its early darkness and holiday pressure. My phone, which I had kept mostly silent for weeks, began buzzing with increasing frequency. Dad, it's Derek. We need to talk about Christmas. The kids are asking why you're not coming to dinner. Dad, please. The restaurant barely survived November. We had to let 2 staff go. If you could just see what we're dealing with, Harold. It's Vanessa. I know we've had our differences, but surely you don't want to spend Christmas alone. That would break Helen's heart. I deleted each message without responding. Helen would have understood. She always saw through Derek's excuses better than I did. But she kept quiet because she knew I needed to figure it out myself. On Christmas Eve, I attended midnight mass at Holy Rosary Cathedral with Evelyn. Neither of us was particularly religious, but the music was beautiful, and the ritual of it connected us to something larger than family drama and financial disputes. As we walked back to my building through the quiet streets, she slipped her arm through mine. You seem lighter tonight, she observed. I feel lighter. First Christmas in years I haven't spent worrying about what someone's going to ask me for. Freedom has a weight of its own, though. Different from burden, but still real. You're very wise, Evelyn Marchetti. I'm very old, Harold Pemberton. That's not the same thing, but people often confuse them. We laughed, and the sound echoed off the empty storefronts. For a moment, I felt young again, or at least younger than the 67 years I carried. Christmas Day itself, I spent alone by choice. Coffee, a good book, A walk through the neighborhood to see the decorated houses. A quiet dinner of roast chicken and vegetables. Simple, but satisfying. No tension, no expectations, no one calculating what they could extract from me. Boxing Day brought unexpected visitors. Tyler, my 19-year-old grandson, appeared at my door with a hockey bag over his shoulder and uncertainty in his eyes. He looked like Derek had at that age, before the entitlement had settled in. "Hey, Grandpa. Mom said you probably wouldn't want to see me, but I came anyway. Come in, Tyler. I always want to see you." He dropped onto my couch with the graceless sprawl of teenage boys everywhere. "So, this thing with Dad, what about it? I don't know the whole story, but I know you gave him a lot of money over the years, and I know he keeps asking for more." "That's a fair summary. I also know," he hesitated. "I know I've probably been part of the problem. Hockey's expensive. Camps and equipment and travel. You paid for a lot of that. I paid because I wanted to support your talent, not because I expected anything in return." "Yeah, but that's the thing, Grandpa. Dad expects stuff. Mom expects stuff. They've always expected it, and you've always given it. I guess I'm wondering why you stopped." I sat across from him, considering my words carefully. "When your grandmother was dying, she told me something I didn't understand until recently. She said, 'Harold, don't let love become a transaction. The moment you're paying for affection, you've already lost it." Tyler nodded slowly. Grandma was smart. Smarter than me. It took me 14 years and almost $500,000 to figure out what she knew all along. $500,000? His eyes widened. "I knew it was a lot, but your parents never mentioned the specifics." "No, I don't suppose they would have." We talked for another hour. Tyler told me about his hockey season, his grades, his uncertain plans for after high school. He was considering trades instead of university, maybe electrician or plumber. Something practical, something that would let him support himself without depending on anyone else. "Grandpa, can I ask you something?" "Anything." "There's this guy who works at the arena. He runs an apprenticeship program for the electrical union. He says I've got good hands and patience, which matters for that kind of work. But the program costs $8,000, and I've only saved about $3,000. I waited. "I'm not asking you to pay for it," Tyler said quickly. "I know how that sounds after everything. But if I got accepted, could you maybe lend me the difference? I'd pay it back with interest. I can show you my plan. Show me." He pulled out his phone, opened a spreadsheet, projected income from his part-time job at the rink, monthly payment schedule, timeline for repayment. It was rough, clearly done by someone without much financial experience, but the effort was real. If I get into the program, I could start earning journeyman wages within 4 years. Average is about $90,000 a year, way more than I'd make with a university degree in something useless. "You've thought about this seriously." "Grandpa, I don't want to end up like Dad, always chasing the next big thing, always needing someone else to bail him out. I want to build something real." I looked at my grandson, seeing perhaps for the first time the man he was trying to become, different from his father, maybe because he had watched Derek's struggles up close and learned from them. "I'll give you the money," I said. "Not a loan, a gift, but with one condition." His face lit up, then grew cautious. "What condition?" "You never tell your parents where it came from. This is between us. Done." He hugged me, awkward and fierce in the way of young men who haven't learned how to express emotion gracefully. After he left, I sat alone in the gathering dark, feeling something shift in my chest. Maybe I hadn't failed entirely. Maybe something good could still grow from the wreckage. January brought new assaults. Derek showed up unannounced one Tuesday evening, just as I was preparing dinner. Through the intercom camera, I could see he wasn't alone. Vanessa stood beside him, along with 2 older figures I recognized immediately. His parents, Gerald and Dorothy Lawson. We had been friendly once, before the constant requests for money had soured my relationship with their son. "Harold, please let us up." Gerald's voice crackled through the speaker. "We just want to talk, all of us. Like reasonable adults." Against my better judgment, I buzzed them in. 5 minutes later, 4 people stood in my small living room, filling it uncomfortably. Vanessa had clearly been crying. Derek looked exhausted. Gerald and Dorothy wore matching expressions of forced pleasantness. "Harold," Dorothy began, her voice sweet as poison honey, "we've heard there's been some family tension. Gerald and I thought we might help mediate." "Mediate what, exactly?" "This unfortunate misunderstanding. Derek tells us you've cut off financial support for the restaurant." "That's correct." After 14 years of partnership, Gerald cut in. "You're just walking away?" "Partnership implies mutual benefit. What I had with Derek was patronage." "It's different." Derek stepped forward. "Dad, the restaurant is going under. We're 3 months behind on rent, 2 months behind on supplier payments. The bank is threatening to call our loan. Without help, we'll lose everything. Then you'll learn what it feels like to rebuild from nothing. I did it at your age. Your grandfather did it at his. It's called character development." Vanessa's mask finally cracked. "Character development? Harold, we're talking about our children's futures. Our home. Everything we've built. Everything you've built on my money, you mean. The house is mortgaged to the foundation. The restaurant has never shown a profit. The only thing keeping your lifestyle afloat has been my pension and your parents' occasional contributions." I turned to Gerald and Dorothy. "You've given them nearly 40,000 over the years. Did you know that?" Their shocked expressions told me they hadn't tracked the total. "That can't be right," Dorothy said weakly. 32,000 from your retirement fund to cover various emergencies. 5,000 for Tyler's hockey. 3,000 last Christmas because the restaurant had a slow quarter. I keep records." Gerald's face reddened. "Derek, is this true?" "Dad, you don't understand the restaurant industry. I understand that my son has been draining both sets of parents like a vampire, while pretending to be a responsible businessman." The room erupted. Vanessa accused me of poisoning Derek's relationship with his own parents. Derek shouted about loyalty and family duty. Dorothy started crying. Gerald looked like he wanted to punch something. Only I remained calm, standing beside my kitchen window, watching the storm I had finally allowed myself to unleash. "Enough," I said, and something in my voice cut through the noise. "I gave your son nearly $500,000 over 14 years. I never asked for repayment. I never demanded gratitude. All I wanted was respect and occasionally to be treated like a human being instead of a walking bank account. What I got instead was Vanessa telling me to find somewhere else to live when I declined to write another check. So I left. And I'm not coming back." Harold Dorothy reached toward me. "Go home," I told her gently. "You and Gerald are good people who raised a son with more ambition than sense. That's not a crime. But I'm done enabling the consequences. Derek and Vanessa need to face reality without a safety net. It's the only way they'll ever learn." They left in clusters of bitter silence. Derek went first, slamming my door hard enough to draw a complaint from the neighbor. Vanessa followed, promising through tears that I would regret this. Gerald and Dorothy lingered a moment, caught between defending their son and recognizing the truth of what I had said. "We didn't know it was that much," Gerald admitted quietly. "Now you do." After they were gone, I poured myself a glass of scotch and stood at the window, watching the lights of Vancouver spread out below me. Somewhere across the city, Derek's restaurant was failing. My daughter-in-law was learning that charm couldn't pay mortgages. My son was discovering that entitlement doesn't substitute for competence. I should have felt guilty. Instead, I felt free. February brought the collapse I had predicted. Derek called at 2 a.m, his voice ragged with exhaustion. "Dad, the restaurant's done. Closed tonight." We couldn't make payroll, and the staff walked out. "The landlord's lawyers are already circling." "I'm sorry to hear that. The house is next. The bank says we have 60 days to catch up on the mortgage or they start foreclosure proceedings. Then I suggest you and Vanessa find employment. Real jobs with real paychecks. Dad, please. Just this once. We need 50,000 to stabilize everything. After this, I'll never ask again." I almost laughed. "You've said that before. After the wedding. After the house. After the first restaurant renovation. After every emergency for 14 years. The answer is no. You're condemning your own grandchildren to poverty. Mackenzie has a scholarship to UBC starting in September. She earned it herself. Tyler is enrolled in an electrical apprenticeship starting next month. He's building something real. Your children will be fine. It's you and Vanessa who need to grow up. He hung up without another word. Within weeks, the changes accelerated. Derek took a job as a line cook at a chain restaurant, a massive step down from owning his own place, but steady work. Vanessa started teaching yoga classes at a community center, using skills she had previously considered beneath her. They lost the house in April. The bank auction brought barely enough to cover the outstanding mortgage, leaving them with nothing. They moved into a 2-bedroom rental in Surrey, a neighborhood Vanessa had once mocked as where dreams go to die. Through it all, I kept my distance. Mackenzie reported occasionally on family developments, but I didn't seek information. My life had found its own rhythm, and I protected it fiercely. Evelyn and I had grown closer through the winter months. Dinners at her place, walks through Stanley Park, afternoons at the museum or the library. She never asked about my family situation, but she listened when I needed to talk, and her silence felt supportive rather than judgmental. "You're different from the man I met in October," she observed one evening as we watched the sunset from the seawall near English Bay. "How so?" "Steadier, less haunted, like you've finally stopped carrying something too heavy." "I've stopped carrying other people's failures. It's surprisingly liberating." She slipped her hand into mine. "My husband used to say that the hardest part of loving someone is knowing when to let them struggle. You can save people from consequences, but then you're just delaying the lesson they need to learn. Your husband sounds like he was a wise man. He was. I miss him every day, but I've also learned to live without him." She squeezed my fingers. "That's what survivors do, Harold. We learn to live." Spring arrived slowly, the way it does in Vancouver, with rain giving way to occasional sun, cherry blossoms exploding across the city, and a general sense of renewal in the air. I had begun looking at properties outside the city, small houses in the Fraser Valley or the Sunshine Coast, where the pace of life matched my mood. "You're leaving Vancouver?" Mackenzie asked when I mentioned it. We were having lunch at her favorite cafe near UBC, where she would start classes in September. Thinking about it, the city's expensive, and I don't need much space. A little house near the water, maybe a garden. Your grandmother always wanted a garden. Can I come visit? You can always visit. You're one of the few people I actually want to see. She smiled, that Helen smile that still caught me off guard. Grandpa, can I tell you something? Of course. Tyler told me what you did for him. The apprenticeship money. I felt my face warm. He wasn't supposed to mention that. He didn't say it was a gift. I just figured it out. Dad and Mom certainly couldn't afford it, and Tyler's too proud to take charity from them anyway. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. You're a good person, Grandpa. I know you think you're being hard on Dad, but what you're really doing is giving him a chance to become someone better, even if he doesn't take it. And if he doesn't, then you've still given Tyler and me something better than money. You've shown us what it looks like to have standards. The words stayed with me long after we parted. Standards. Self-respect. The courage to say no when saying yes would only perpetuate harm. Helen had tried to teach me these things for decades, but I had been too busy being generous to learn. In May, I found the house. A small cottage in Gibsons, on the Sunshine Coast, with a view of Howe Sound and the mountains beyond. 2 bedrooms, a garden plot already prepared by the previous owner, and the kind of deep quiet that only exists outside the city. It's perfect, Evelyn said when I showed her the listing. Are you going to take it? I already made an offer. Full asking price. Cash. Harold Pemberton, you're full of surprises. I'm full of something. Anyway, mostly relief. The closing happened in June. By Canada Day, I was settling into my new home, unpacking boxes, hanging Helen's watercolors on fresh walls, learning the rhythm of a place where the loudest sounds were eagles calling and ferries crossing the water. Evelyn came to visit on weekends. She kept her own place in Vancouver, near her volunteer work and her community. But we had reached an understanding about our relationship. Companionship without possession. Support without dependency. Love without the transactions that had poisoned my relationship with Derek. Tyler started his apprenticeship in the fall. He called every Sunday to update me on his progress, the technical challenges, the satisfaction of learning something practical and valuable. He had moved into his own apartment with a roommate from the program, paying his own way, building his own life. "Grandpa, I have to tell you something," he said one October evening, his voice tinged with discomfort. "Dad asked me for money yesterday." "What did you say?" I said no. He got pretty angry, said some stuff about how I was turning out just like you. "And how do you feel about that?" A pause. "Honestly, kind of proud." Thanksgiving arrived, my second since leaving Derek's house. This time, I wasn't alone. Tyler came up on the ferry from Vancouver, bringing pumpkin pie from a bakery he had discovered. Mackenzie drove from the city, her car packed with textbooks and laundry she would do at my place. Evelyn arrived with a turkey she had been brining for 3 days, plus her famous stuffing recipe. We gathered around my dining table, 4 people bound not by obligation but by choice. The turkey was perfect. The conversation flowed easily. Gratitude filled the air, genuine and unforced. "To family," Tyler said, raising his glass of apple cider. "Chosen and otherwise. To growth," Mackenzie added. "Even when it hurts. To second chances," Evelyn offered, "and the courage to take them." I looked around at these 3 faces, these people who had come to represent everything I had learned about love in the past year. Support without strings. Connection without calculation. The kind of family I had always wanted but had never known how to build. "To Helen," I said quietly, who tried to teach me all of this long before I was ready to listen. We drank, and the silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full, complete, whole. Later that evening, as Evelyn and I washed dishes while the kids played cards in the living room, my phone buzzed. Derek's name on the screen, the first contact attempt in months. "Dad, it's me. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but Vanessa and I are separating. She filed papers last week. Said she finally realized she married a dreamer instead of a provider." I stepped onto the back porch, looking out at the water. "I'm sorry to hear that. Are you? Because everything you predicted came true. The restaurant, the house, now my marriage. You must feel pretty vindicated." "I don't feel vindicated, Derek. I feel sad. Sad for the years we wasted, both of us. Sad for what we might have been to each other if I hadn't enabled you for so long and you hadn't expected it." Silence on the line. Then, surprisingly, a sound like a choked laugh. "Mom always said you were too soft. She told me once, right before she died, that the kindest thing you could do for me was stop giving me money. I thought she was being cruel. Your mother was the wisest person I ever knew. I'm starting to understand that." Another pause. "Dad, I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. For all of it. For taking you for granted. For letting Vanessa speak to you that way. For treating you like a bank instead of a father. I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed to say it." I let the words hang in the cool evening air, the sound of waves gentle below the cottage. "Saying it is a start, Derek. Is there any chance we could, I don't know, try again? Not the money stuff. I know that's over. But maybe just talking sometimes? I'd like that. But it has to be real. You call to ask how I'm doing, not to give me an update on your problems. You remember birthdays, not because you want something, but because you care. You show up because you want to be there, not because you need something. I understand. Do you? I'm learning to." We talked a few minutes more, awkward and tentative, 2 strangers trying to remember how to be father and son. When I went back inside, Evelyn looked up from drying the last of the plates. "Everything all right? Better than it's been in a long time." Tyler won the card game. Mackenzie accused him of cheating but couldn't prove it. They argued with the comfortable ease of siblings who actually liked each other, a sound I had missed more than I realized. As the evening wound down and the kids settled into the guest rooms, Evelyn and I sat together on the back porch, wrapped in blankets against the autumn chill, watching the lights of the ferry terminal across the water. "You look peaceful," she observed. "I think I finally am. It only took you 67 years. I'm a slow learner," she laughed, and the sound echoed across the quiet water. Inside, the cottage glowed with warmth. Tomorrow, there would be leftover turkey and long walks, and the simple pleasure of time shared with people who valued each other. The silence around us wasn't empty anymore. It was full. Through the kitchen window, I could see Helen's watercolors hanging on the wall, the ones she had painted during our summers together when the kids were young and the future seemed infinite. She would have liked this place. She would have liked Evelyn. She would have been proud of the man I was finally becoming. To hear the next story, click the box on the left.